It gets you thinking. Now imagine among us, have we got any freshers? Yeah, wow. So in like 5 years' time, when you have to talk about your fresher experience, you'll say there was this guy who talked to me and it was just a fantastic evening. You'll probably be saying that. Some of you finalists, who's at the end of the road? Yeah, well done. Well done. You all look a bit weary, I can see. It's good that you're nearly out. Any returners? I suppose that's the rest of you. So those of you, going into your second years, third years, and then post-grads. Certainly seen a friend, Elizabeth. Yeah, and a few others. Guys, great to have you all here. And what's fascinating, even with that big, huge spread of us, is that we are all experiencing life, aren't we? We're all at a different stage of life. And for the fresher, there are different pressures to what there are for the finalists. And there are different joys too, whatever stage you're at. And as I've already said, married to Sarah, I can certainly vouch that even when you get out the other end of uni, there is still the pressures, but also the joys. That's true. But for each one of us, I wonder, if I asked you the question, for you to live is what? Finish the sentence. For you to live is what? I wonder how you respond. I had that great video and people were articulating all kinds of things, weren't they? But maybe you haven't been stopped in the street. Maybe this is your moment now, in your seat. For you to live is what? Now you might turn around to me and say, well, Andrew, to stop and think this through is to deny myself the opportunity to live. Why would I want to waste my time thinking that through? But to put your finger on what life means and what you're actually living for, it's actually something really quite hard to do. Yet you're all intelligent people here. And you're those who are really investing not only your time but your money into your lives, given the fact you're at university now. And I just wonder, isn't it only right that you are certain about what life is about, and so live accordingly? You can't help but see in all of the media, we're flooded, aren't we, with this whole idea of life. In magazines that you'll read, in the films that you'll watch, the music that you're listening to, even the stuff people are posting on Facebook, and you really want to know what she goes on to do next, so much of what we consume, so much of what we take on, day in, day out, carries with it that answer to what your best life is. Isn't that true? All those things that we're sold and all those things that we're told to pursue, we're told to do that because that is how you will get your best life. That is how you will find happiness. Well, just tonight I want you to suspend all of that, and I want you to allow me to take you through another insight into life. That which Hun has already read for us in John's Gospel. For those of you who maybe don't know John's Gospel, it's a biography. It's a written, factual account of the life of Jesus. And the passage that we're going to look at now is one that opens up for us this whole question of, is there more to life than this? And in doing so, we're not just going to examine the passage, and we're not even just going to examine the person of Jesus. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start to examine ourselves as well. And I hope, come the end, you and I will be that bit clearer on the claims of Jesus and the invitation that he makes to each of us that our best life is to be found in him. So if you've got one of those New Testaments, it'd be great to see it open. If not, you can pull it up on your phone. If you've got a Bible app or something like that. But let's see how John opens things up. You see from verse 1, what does he say? In the beginning, John is wanting to take us back to the very start of things, isn't he, where he says that. And that might not necessarily strike a chord with you, but it would have really resonated with his original audience, those who would have first picked up this gospel. For those are the words that are in the biblical account of how the world came to be. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God. It's no accident of John's here. This is what he's doing as he's introducing us to Jesus, who he refers to as being the Word. Do you see that? Verse 1, in the beginning was the Word. You've got it up there. What he's doing as he introduces us to Jesus is he wants us to be thinking of that time before anything had come into being. Yeah? That time where in Genesis 1:1 it says, in the beginning, God. So before there was matter, before there was anything, there was only God in eternity past. And in verse 1, what we've got here, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that really matters when we go down to verse 4, which reads, in Him, that is, in the Word, in Jesus Christ, the Creator of the universe, who was with God and was God, in Him was life. Verse 4, in Him was life. It's up there, isn't it? What John is telling us is that in the beginning, before there was anything else but God, there was life. And that life was in Him, Jesus. Just take a moment to have that soak in, because it's an incredible statement. And it's one that really is profound. And you might ask me, Andrew, why so? Why is that the case? What's the big deal? Well, there are all these other worldviews that are constructed around the whole idea and belief system that in the beginning there was no God and there was absolutely nothing. And those people who hold to those kind of worldviews say, and it is from this nothing that matter and energy came to be, and then, here's the important bit, those things gave rise to life. The claims of John that we've got here, just in front of us, that we're able to read tonight, are so profound because the point that he's making here is that there was life beforehand. Then there was matter and energy. Because in the beginning there was the Word, and in Him was life. Now I'm sure most of you are familiar with walking down the high street and you can't fail but to miss a fat face. Yeah? Fat face, they're always there, luring you in. And their big tagline, I don't know whether you know it, their big tagline is, life is out there. Some of you are probably looking on the inside of your shirts now and reading that back. Yeah, it really does say that life is out there. But even if you couldn't care for those cords that they seem to sell at a ridiculous price, or those zip-through tops that just really aren't that cool anymore, you have to agree that their marketing is just so enticing, isn't it? And it's purely for that reason that they sell this idea. And they sell this idea that life is out there, that you can find life. They sell this idea that it can be found. And more than that, it can be found in and through experience. So you've got the good-looking, perfectly blonde, sun-kissed guys and girls who have just had a great day surf, and then they're all around the camper van. Life is out there. Buy yourself one of those zippy hoodies, and you'll find life. Yeah. Hey, I've been fortunate enough to ski in Europe. I've been fortunate enough even to trek a glacier in New Zealand, and I've done many other wonderful things. But what it says here, what John is asserting, is that that isn't where true life is to be found. He's saying that to us tonight. Those greatest of experiences, or even in that greatest of relationships, it's not going to be found there. True life won't be found there. Sure, those things will be appealing to us, exhilarating and full of excitement. But for one thing that there will never be ultimate. And that's because, as we heard, in the beginning there was the Word, there was Jesus, and in Him was life. True life existing before and therefore outside of the material. So we're right to ask, is there more to life than this? It's a great question to ask. But we're wrong to assume that more to life is found in the world. Just think on that for a moment. Just think on that for a moment. We're wrong to assume that more to life is found in the world. Doesn't that make you rethink the way that you're living? Does it call you to rethink the attitudes that you have to those nights out, those sporting successes, your studies, your relationships, pursuing that first-class degree, your careers that you're going to have, those houses that you long maybe to own, and even a legacy that you hope to leave? Does it cause you to rethink those things? Because that might not be where more to life is to be found. And I think it's time to actually have a look then to fully explain the kind of life that John has in mind for us here. Let's call it the reality, okay? John, as he writes in verse 4, says, "In him was life." When he says that, he's talking about new life, spiritual life, the gift of eternal life. And it's a recurrent theme. If you go on to look through John's Gospel, and I'm sure you're going to go back to it this term, just comes up again and again and again, this extraordinary gift of new life that Jesus makes available. And John goes on to write elsewhere, God gave us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever doesn't have the Son of God doesn't have life. Or put another way, the reality of this new life is, apart from Jesus, then we're all dead. We're all dead. John is almost saying to us, go out on a Saturday afternoon. Look out at all those people on Bath High Street. See those who are walking. See those who are breathing and laughing and chatting away. See how alive they are. But those who don't have Jesus, they are dead. Those who haven't got a full grasp of who Jesus is, they are dead. For it is only as we believe in Jesus, only if we have him do we have life. It's the connection we're to make. For those who are spiritually dead are in darkness. They're blind even to the reality of Jesus. The reality that there's more to life. And it seems really bleak, doesn't it? Hopeless, if you like. What hope is there for those who are in that darkness? Yet verse 4 continues. John goes on to say, in him was life, and all that life was the light of all mankind. In him was that life, and that life was the light of all mankind. And, verse 5, the light shines in the darkness. Do you see that? Hope comes from Jesus making himself known, because he is one who shines in the darkness. If that we have had was the reality, this idea that life is only in Jesus, now we've got this revelation. Now we've got this whole thing of Jesus making himself known. Hands up if you've ever been stuck with nothing to do, probably on a Friday night, and you flicked onto ITV2 and you've seen The Matrix. Has anyone seen The Matrix? A few of you. I thought it was a bit far-fetched. It's a bit old. But hey, if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. Keanu Reeves, long black trench coats. First film that gave us like 360-degree camera. Oh, it was great. If you haven't seen it, picture the world that they portray in The Matrix. Okay? It's a world where there is the last of the human race. And what are they doing? well, they're unknowingly kept in a virtual world. Okay? So it's the last of the human race, and they're unknowingly kept in this virtual world. And then this guy Morpheus, he enters into this virtual world. He enters into this guy Neo. He comes into his world, and he sits Neo down, and he goes on to explain to him that there is more to life than that which he can see, that which he can touch, that which he can taste. And he goes on to say to him, Neo, life isn't all it seems. But more than that, within the Matrix, humanity isn't free. Humanity is imprisoned. They're stuck in this virtual world against their will, unknowingly so. And so Morpheus, he is critical, isn't he, to Neo truly seeing the reality, explaining that there is more to life than we think. We didn't give much attention when we started why at first John calls Jesus the Word. You saw that back in verse 1, didn't you? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I'd have hoped as you read that, as Hun read that to us, that didn't sit well with you. And you thought that's a funny way to introduce someone, especially when it's a book all about them. Should have said something like, and this is Jesus. Meet Jesus. This is this guy. Yet John says to us, Jesus, he's the Word. He's the Word of God. And that's the case because he was coming as the message of God. And you see, God had much more to say than the words that Jesus was going to speak in his time on the earth. God wanted to declare who Jesus was and what he'd come to do. Because Jesus himself was the main truth that God was intent on revealing. And so that's why we get John writing in verse 9. Do you see it? The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. We're talking about this idea of this revelation. Here then was Jesus, who in him was life, and that life was the light of men. And so, going on to verse 14, flicking on to verse 14, we get, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as only of the Son of the Father, full of grace and of truth. And so, from what we've already seen, the reality is that Jesus is life. You see that here. He is life before matter, before energy. He is life. And he is too the revelation that Jesus is God's message to us. That life just isn't what it seems. We've had that. And now we have the final thing that we're going to look at. This idea of the rescue. Jesus becoming flesh. The Word becoming flesh. Dwelling among us, coming and living on this planet. Stepping down into the world. And this is the most amazing bit, because this is where Jesus comes, and he comes, and even though he is light, he takes on our darkness. This is where his arms are stretched out, and this is where he is hung on a cross, and even the whole world falls into darkness. But the true darkness, the true blindness, the true barrier to us and God, our sin, that is the very thing that on the cross Jesus Christ experiences. That is the very thing that he's plunged into. Far worse than that disorientating sense of being in a pitch black room where you don't know where you're going. There wasn't only that abandonment there, but there was all of that pain, there was all of that anger from God being poured out on Jesus, that which we deserve. That was the rescue. I don't think we've got it up here. But John goes on to write, and he goes on to say of Jesus, "Behold, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world." John, the one who wrote this, he came to introduce Jesus. And Jesus has come that we might be introduced to God, that we might have relationship with God, that we might know life in its fullness. And how? Well, none of us going on a search for life being out there. None of us for going and pursuing that, but recognizing that Jesus Christ came, the Word became flesh, and he dwelt among us. And ultimately he went to the cross, where he bore our darkness, where he bore our sin, only to be dead, and then to rise again, new life, so that those of us who come to trust him, all of those who received him, John says in verse 12, who believed in his name, who knew that Jesus did have life within him, was making life available to us. All of those of us who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Those are huge claims that I've just made there. The reality, the revelation, and the rescue. And I think it's only attested to when people meet Jesus and they come to trust him, and the difference Jesus makes. How do people react when they meet Jesus? That has got to be one of the best ways that we can test these claims. And I want to encourage you tonight, if you're someone who maybe has thought about Christianity for a while and has just sort of let it go by the by, if you maybe have had a negative experience in a church, or if you've been really hurt by friends who are Christians and who have just seemed incessant in their going on at you, I just encourage you to have a look at how people respond to Jesus when they meet him. And honestly, I think one of the best ways of doing that is looking through the Bible. And if you're wanting to do that, on Wednesdays, down in Cafe Nero, the CU are going to be running something called See for Yourself. It's just going to be an opportunity to come and to look further into the gospel of Jesus, and to pore over accounts of people who came face to face with Jesus, one who in him was life. And you can see the turnaround, and you can see the transformation that happens when people meet Jesus, when people accept what Jesus is offering them, when they see that he is their rescue from that darkness and that blindness, and when their eyes are open. It's awesome. It's great. Guys, I'm going to stop there. I think Gerwin's going to come and join me. Like I said, I mentioned a lot. I made some really big claims. I think over these next 10 minutes or so, you're going to have the opportunity to fire your questions to me. I think, are we going to do it by texting in?
Yeah, so you can either ask questions by putting your hand up and opening from the floor, or you can text into, if you want him. So you can either ask your questions by speaking from the floor, so you just put your hand up and we'll answer your question, or if you don't want to do that, just text in and ask a question. It can be a question from Andrew's talk or something else. Please bear in mind that neither of us are geniuses. But yeah, we might not be able to answer all your questions, but we'll go ahead. So does anybody have any questions from the floor? No? Is anything affected? Okay, I'm guessing if you just want to think of questions, if you have any, and maybe text them in as we're just...
One's just come in.
Ideal. That's what we're looking for. Hi Andrew, how did you become Christian?
Great, really helpful. So after dressing up as an old lady at that bop that I was talking to you about, I went on to live with a guy called Tom. Tom was someone who he had a real zest for life. You know the people, sometimes they're sickening, and I just think, why can't they be a bit more miserable, aren't they? But Tom had a real zest for life, okay? At the time, I was someone who was really trying to find a reason for my life and sort of identify the purpose, why I was here, what I was doing. And I think I predominantly did that through my degree. I also was trying to run a volunteer scheme that was I thought was going to do great things for my career and get me into teaching. I also was holding down a relationship, and I was a big member of the hockey team, and I kind of had a girlfriend. So basically, I had all this stuff going on, pretty hectic, and Tom didn't have any of this. He was a good-looking guy. He could dance, but he didn't have a girlfriend or things like that. He wouldn't go out. He wouldn't drink, and he was doing these kind of things. And I said to him, day after day, I was like, Tom, what is it? I want whatever you've got. I've got all this stuff in my life, but I'm empty. I'm empty. He told me he was a Christian, and at that point, my wall went up. I was like, I know about you Christians, and I don't want anything to do with you. So fun I'm here now, isn't it? But in time, I think things got worse for me. So I increasingly put more and more pressure on myself. I was increasingly looking to justify who I was by the stuff I did. And I became unwell with it. And I was just waking up day after day, and I just kind of had enough. And I was pretty reckless. I just cried out a prayer. I didn't even know what I was doing. I said, God, if you're real, show yourself. And you know what? In that moment, nothing happened. But in time, I came to see more of Tom's life. I went back home and I bumped into an old school friend. God was really out to get me because he'd become a church worker. So I was even living with a Christian, and all my friends were Christians. But his course was doing like a course, like they put on a meal, and then it was a case of ask your questions. And it was through that really, and it was through looking at the claims of Jesus that I realised that, man, I'm not able to make a life for myself. I'm not able to do all this. And there is one far greater than me, outside of me, who is saying, Andrew, look, I am what life is. I am what you can live for. And so I became a Christian that way. I still had the struggles with going out with the hockey guys, and I'd drink a bit, and that was fine. I still had girlfriends and things, and ended up meeting Sarah, so that was great. And just all these kind of things, but still had similar struggles, and still do today. But it was really through having another Christian in my life. So if you're here as a CU and maybe your friends hasn't come along, just be encouraged. Your faithful, ongoing sort of being around them is really gonna go well. And if you're not a Christian, just investigate the claims for yourself. I'll stop there because I hear buzzing.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzzing. Okay, two questions are quite a lot alike. So, what if I'm happy with my life as it is and don't need God? And the other one just after that is, what if I'm not a Christian but I don't feel empty?
Great, really helpful. Okay, so you're not at the end of yourself, you're not seeing your need for God. I think we need to come back to what we get in. We need to come back to what we get in John's Gospel there. That we are those who are blinded to what true life is. Just trying to pick out. Okay, he was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. We can be blinded to what that true life is, we can fail to see that. Now, I know that sounds arrogant, but that is the claim of the Bible, really, that we are in that position, that unless God opens our eyes, we cannot see. So, for those who say, question again?
What if I'm happy as I am?
What if I'm happy as I am? Then I would say we are those who are too easily satisfied. Because what Jesus Christ offers us is something that we can not get in any other way. What Jesus Christ offers us is something that is outside of what we could live for ourselves. So we sort of say it's transcendent. It goes above and beyond. And I would also say to you, the claim of the Bible as well, that when we are done on this earth, we will face God. And if all we can say before God is, God, I was happy, God, I lived my life in a good way, the Bible tells us that isn't enough. And that isn't enough because of our position with God, in that we have sinned and that we have lived lives that completely disobey and disregard God. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. So, final question. Second question maybe to Andrew at the end. What do you do daily to make sure you live in the life that Jesus provides us, rather than simply living, as you described earlier, just living and breathing as everybody else does?
Very, really helpful question. How do you live an alive life, maybe? How do you live a life that is rich? Rich in knowing the truths of Jesus and all that he has done. I think the amazing thing to say on this point is that you become a Christian and then you don't just forget the rest of your life and just pray and do Bible study. But what happens is that you just begin to see things differently. Your worldview changes, your outlook changes. So I can now see that God actually is delighted when I play sport. That God is really pleased when I use my body and go for a run. That I see that God is really thrilled when I seek to put Sarah before myself, as hard as that is. And that God cares about all of those different aspects of my life. So how do I live that alive life? Well, I remind myself, first of all, of the true stuff. The true stuff that says, Andrew, your better life isn't out there. Andrew, you can forget what Fatface is telling you. You don't need to go searching for it. You've already found it. And it's like that thing that you just need to come back to time and time again to remind yourself that this is actually true. This is what I've got. I have Christ, and that is enough. So to live that alive life, I think first of all I stop then seeking after life itself, but yet I can still go and embrace all of life. That I can do my studies, that I can pursue my career, that I can go after a relationship, but I know that those things aren't definitive for me. Those things are where I'm not going to find ultimate life. And I don't know whether you're a Christian here or not tonight, but if you're not, how relieving does that sound? How relieving does that sound that you need to go out and you need to search life for yourself? That life is available in Christ, and that you might grab hold of that and not need for anything else. I think that's how I live. That helps.
Okay, well, do you want to give Andrew a round of applause?